you're saying in that situation where you're a locums doc or you're transitioning to locums or you're starting your own practice, you still recommend getting private disability insurance?
Everyone who needs their income should have disability insurance. If you imagine that your last paycheck was really your last paycheck, would you be okay? And for most of us, the answer is no. We all have car insurance. We all have health insurance. A lot of people get their engagement rings insured, right? I would have much rather lost my engagement ring than my ability to practice.
What's good, everyone? This is Dr. Nee back with another episode. This time we got Stephanie Pearson with Pearson Ravitz. What's good, Dr. Stephanie? How you doing?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm awesome. It's 2024. We are building off of our previous episode. I don't remember the episode number that you were on, but recently you were on and you talked about your story about how you ended up having issues with disability insurance and how you ended up using that after in essence, like an on-site, on-the-job injury, and how you decided to open up your own firm, your own practice, selling disability insurance as well as life insurance to healthcare professionals. We're going to put that link in the show notes, y'all, so you guys can go back and take a look at that. But on the spot, I don't remember the number. I'm 45. This is a 45-year-old brain.
I would not expect you to remember.
Thank you. I appreciate the grace. But what we're here to talk about is talk to the residents, talk to the locums docs, as well as talk to some of the attendings out there about disability insurance. Because look, you throw in all the things that we just don't learn about. High up there is actually financial advice, right? We got investing that sometimes can be, you want to stick your head in the sand with, but also now we got disability insurance and all the different type of insurance quotes and numbers. So let's jump right into it.
Yeah.
I know that docs, particularly medical residents, we're at a point where now you've already spent 4 years in college, you did 4 years of medical school, maybe a little bit more, 4 or 5 in med school, and now you're probably in your first or second year of residency. And here comes Stephanie Pearson talking about, docs, you need to protect your greatest investment, which is, your physical ability to do your practice. But the resident is going to come back to you and say, Doc, I got debt. I got a bunch of student loan debt that I'm trying to pay for. I just got this new check, this new salary that I'm trying to figure it out with, and I'm trying to save money. I don't have time to get disability insurance. Dr. Stephanie, what do you say?
So I would argue that this is one of, if not the most important thing that needs to happen while you're in training. And I'm probably in a small handful of brokers that will tell residents just because, and actually I tell everybody, so it's not just residents, I also tell attendings, just because you qualify for a certain amount of benefit doesn't mean that you need to purchase it all. And one of the biggest things with getting it in training, different from when you become an attending, is that all of the carriers offer discounts to trainees. And once you lock that discount in, every dollar that you purchase moving forward is discounted. And you're never going to be younger than you are when you start training. And so a lot of times what we'll do is kind of reverse engineer a policy early in training. I guess I should take a step back. There are currently 5 major companies that offer specialty-specific on-occupation policies for physicians. So it's not a giant playground. And each of them has different discount programs. And they'll let you kind of get your foot in for a small benefit. And so what we can talk about is, okay, can you spend $50 a month, right? Can you spend $25 a month?
Can you get it that low?
We can. Not for most women. Sorry, ladies. But we can for men.
Women get screwed with disability insurance. I'll be honest with
you. Women pay almost twice as much as men. Thankfully, we get a little bit of break on the life insurance side. It's more expensive for men. Not entirely as sexist as it appears. It is based on true actuarial data that says women leave the workforce more often than men because of injury or illness. Men tend to die younger and more successfully at their own hands. And there's a big misconception that life insurance doesn't pay for suicide. A lot of the better companies will, just not within the first 2 years that you buy the policy. And
Ah,
so that's kind of their catch, right? You don't
they
want
want you to think
somebody,
about it first.
right? They don't want you purchasing a policy knowing that you're planning that. It was actually something really smart my husband made me do after I got hurt. I was not in a very good mental headspace, but my injury didn't affect my mortality. It just affected my morbidity. And we got more life insurance for me. And after I signed it, he said, Did you read it? And of course, I said no. And he highlighted where it said that it would not pay for suicide for the first 2 years of the
Mm,
policy. And
mm.
it was one of the smartest things he did because, admittedly, I was in a very dark place. I had written letters, I had a plan. And at that point, I was like, I can't do it. I can't do that to my kids. More financially than mentally, which is messed up in its own vein, but that's what depression does.
And I remember we covered that in the previous episode where, so much of your, in essence, your worth, excuse me, and
Mhm.
what you can contribute to your family was related to what you did in the hospital as an OB-GYN.
Of
That's,
course.
and that's really tough. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of people think about it when you hear that, you're like, I wonder if I'm the same way.
Right.
Um, so when you're talking to residents and you're telling residents, okay, well, maybe for as cheap as $25 or $50, they can protect. Now, how does that work? What exactly are they protecting? Are they protecting their ability to bring in income? Are they protecting their like? Get specific about that because I think that's the part that I think a lot of residents, well, even in general, just doctors, don't really generally understand about disability insurance. What are you protecting?
You are protecting your ability to earn money practicing what you have been trained and skilled to practice, right? So I'm an OBGYN. I was not cleared to operate. I was not cleared to do OB. I was a very prolific surgeon, and that's how I made most of my money. And I couldn't do either of those things. And so, what my disability insurance did was pay me back a certain amount. And that's another place where people get a little bit confused. Unfortunately, thanks to the physicians from the 80s, um, a lot of things had to change in the DI space when um, HMOs and health insurance kind of came in to play. And a lot of the docs who were making a boatload, right? We all know the docs in the 80s were like making a shit ton. And then they stopped making that. There was an interesting increase in bike accidents, golf accidents, and believe it or not, car accidents. And a lot of docs made claims and actually bankrupted a couple of older
What?
companies.
Are you serious?
I swear, I'm a dork. I love like the history of medicine.
So because they
And
weren't making as much as they were making before, and
they
they
just
already
said, I'm
had
out.
disability insurance, they were getting into these accidents.
Hmm.
Whoa, that's crazy.
And what happened, as does when things like this happen, legislation got involved. And now we're not supposed to be able to be fully insured, meaning we can't make you whole, right? Um, you're covering a percentage of your income, and it's all based on internal proprietary algorithms that the companies have, where we say, okay, Dr. Smith makes X dollars and has a group benefit of X dollars. What does Dr. Smith qualify for? It's not like you can say to me, Steph, I want $20,000 a month in benefit. I'm willing to pay for it. If the numbers don't work out, I can't make it happen. It's one of the most interesting sales positions in that I don't control the product. I don't control the pricing, and I don't control how much I can get you. I can control education, advocacy, and service, right?
Well, so
And
what if a resident comes back to you and says, "Well, look, I'll take my chances. I'm young." Like, what's the likelihood of them what's the likelihood of a claim, or do you have that? What's the likelihood of a claim being, or someone getting injured in residency, or just in general? Do you have that statistics of someone getting injured while they're being a physician?
So because of proprietary stuff, it's almost impossible to get that data.
Really?
If you look at national data, but it kind of encompasses everybody, the kind of rule of thumb is that 1 in 4 will experience a disability during their working career. So I don't have the ability to say, okay, 10% of, residents or whatever.
Got you.
I can say anecdotally that we've had clients go out in training. I also am friends with my disability lawyer, and he has
There's
dozens of.
disability lawyers.
Mhm. We
Damn.
we
Wow, this
sometimes
is such
need
a.
the good guys. There are not good guys and good guys.
So
Um,
when you say disability, you talking about like the injury and like the injury, like ones that we see on TV commercials, those type of.
so disability lawyers do not use a good disability lawyer is usually not that swarmy. I've never seen a
Got
commercial
you.
for a disability lawyer. You're usually
Okay.
seeing commercials for workman's comp or
Yes.
slips and
Yes.
falls, right?
Right.
Ambulance chasers,
That's not the
right?
same thing.
Not the same thing.
Got it. Okay.
Um,
Got it.
and it's interesting because my case got challenged, and I did need a lawyer. However, knock on wood, we've had over 2 dozen claims in the last year and a half, and not a single one needed a lawyer. I'd like to think that it's because I kind of helped them through the process in a way that I wasn't helped. Um, but I'm digressing. Sorry. The short answer is we don't actually know the percentage of physicians. However, every year there are hundreds and hundreds of docs who leave. And interestingly, in our pocket, most of our clients that have gone out on claim have actually been under 45. And I
Mm.
think that most people, when they think disability, they're thinking older, right? They're thinking cancer, stroke. They're not thinking about breast cancer, which we're seeing younger, musculoskeletal
Colon
issues,
cancer.
right?
Yeah, we're seeing that.
Um,
Yeah.
I read somewhere in an ergonomics talk that surgeons are pretty much on par with your basic construction guys. And it kind of makes sense. We put our bodies in really interesting positions
I definitely see
and
orthopedic surgeons.
right.
Definitely.
Um,
Definitely.
and right, and,
Yeah.
and it's not a surprise. And think about how when people, GI guys, they're scoping, they're, moving their bodies. We all do it. Um, and random stuff too. I mean, we had 2 broken femurs, one literally just walking, and turned out that he had undiagnosed cystic
I was about to
lesion.
ask, is that a pathologic
Yeah, it was a
fracture? Right.
pathologic fracture.
Okay.
And then we had a gal get hit by a car walking across the street. Like accidents happen,
See,
right?
it's funny. I'm glad you bring that up because I was thinking, I'm always, I'm a surgeon, trauma surgeon. We think
Hmm.
the worst. So I'm thinking like that you pick up a drinking habit or, you get hypertension, through all the stress of all your attendings and so forth. But no, like you're talking about real life, like, hey, what if you develop cancer? What if
Yeah,
you get hit by a car?
yeah.
You are driving
No, I got
home post
kicked.
call. You got kicked and stuff. So the question I have for you then is, okay, in that situation, the way to look at it if you're a resident is when you're your healthiest, the insurance is the cheapest, right?
Correct. You're the youngest, you're the healthiest, and it's going to be the cheapest because it discounts.
And I didn't know
And
that you could
then
get it that cheap. I did not. I thought it was like because I paid
I didn't
like
either.
I got to be honest with you. Well, I had a certain company that was. I'll just say the initials were NW, but like I was like in
Mm,
the high 200s in residency, 300s, I think. And that was a bit of a struggle for me, but that was more budgeting of an issue. But I thought that
and
was expensive. But I thought that I did not think that you can go cheaper than that, you
you
know?
can. And
Mm.
right now, and I'm painting with a wide brush, all the carriers have different little nuances, but all trainees qualify for a $5,000 a month benefit. Some companies have gotten a little bit higher. The rule of thumb, again, is men should expect to pay 1 to 3% of their gross income. Women should expect to pay 2 to 6%.
That's
And I
total the
will
entire year.
And I will
Okay.
tell you, with the discounts, it gets lower than that. And I made a mistake. I didn't get it till I was an attending. And in my, sadomasochist brain, I went back and ran numbers and I qualified for less and I paid more. Because again, if you remember when I said when you're an attending, they look at how much you make, but they also look at your group benefits. And group benefits often hurt us. They're way inferior. And I didn't even qualify for a $5,000 benefit my first year as an attending.
So these are the benefits. When you say group benefits, well, you have disability insurance as a resident. That's part of like all the residents get that. That's like a group coverage, but that's different than us talking about specifically in this situation, you purchasing your own disability insurance, right? It's
Correct.
like
Correct.
the benefits. There you
Employer
go.
benefits.
See, I knew you. Yeah, there you go.
There you
Okay.
go.
Now,
Yeah.
now
So
you mentioned there was some companies that make it the companies that you should go with. What are those? Is it the top 5 or top 7
mhm.
companies?
So
What are
there's
those companies?
5. So
Okay,
you have Principal, Standard, Emeritus, Mass Mutual, and Guardian. They're
Guardian.
considered the big 5. Uh, Prior to May of 2023, Ohio National was the 6th, but in May they dropped out of the individual disability space, just like MetLife did in 2016. Both of those companies, though, if you have a policy with them and you pay your premium, the policies are intact and protected. It's just that they're not writing new
New ones. So
policies.
you're grandfathered in if you hear your name with that company.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So
Yes.
name those 5 companies again.
Principal, Standard, Emeritus, Mass Mutual, and Guardian.
Okay. Okay. All right. Now, if you're an attending and you're listening to this show and you're like, look, man, like my specialty, like I always get a letter from the American College of Surgeons is this nice thick size envelope. And it says that you can get disability insurance for this amount. And this insurance is specifically tailored for members of the American College of Surgeons. You're a surgeon. So why not buy it from us? Because we know exactly what you go through, right? You get that letter. So I could come back and tell you, Dr. Stephanie, like that's what I got, or that's what I'm thinking about getting. I got a lot of money. I got a lot of debt. I don't have, and also my job, whether it's private practice or, the hospital
Mhm.
based practice that I'm at, they have group policy. Talk to me about that. Why do I need to get my own disability insurance?
So 3 main reasons that we have issues with employer policies, and then I'll talk about association policies for a little bit. Most group employer benefits happen to be employer paid, right? It's part of your benefits package. It's one box that you check off, right, during open enrollment. They don't have to actually give you the policy, which is mind-boggling to me. It's one of the banes of my existence is trying to get these full documents. But it comes down to taxation, ownership, and language.
Okay.
If your employer is paying for your policy, any money that you get from that policy is taxable income.
Uh,
Private policy, you're paying for yourself with post-tax dollars. So the benefit comes tax-free. Big difference between money that's getting taxed and money that's not getting taxed, right? Second, ownership.
so that $5,000 is not really $5,000.
Mm-mm.
Got
Not
you.
from a group benefit. From
Got
a
you.
private, yes.
Got you.
Ownership is the second. Most of these employer paid policies are employment dependent. So you walk away, it's not coming with you. And recent data shows, right, that most of us will make 3 to 5 job changes during our working years. And so you may have been covered And then
You'll hear me applaud, not to cut you off, but I'm like, yes, we should, because
right,
the way how the job market is and the way it's contracting with all these mergers, you may have to make a move a couple of times. So that makes sense. Yeah,
right.
you can't
And
take it
so it
with
doesn't
you.
go with you. But if you have a private policy, it's portable. I joke it's like having it in your back pocket. I kind of age myself. I know it's really on a computer, but it's going to go with you wherever you go, right? It grows up with you, is what I like to say, right? The biggest issue, though, is language, right? You want to know what you're actually covered for. And unfortunately, these employer benefits need to be cheap, right? The employer's covering everybody and they don't really want to pay
Now I
out,
get it.
right? So a lot of them are somewhat misleading. They'll tell you that it's own occupation, but then you read the document and it may be own occupation for 2 years, and then it switches to any occupation. Or the definition of own occupation is what's called held to the national economy or the local labor market. It is not specific to what one employee does at one employer site. Well, you put 100 surgeons up against a wall, you're not all doing the same thing. You're
Mhm.
not practicing the same way, right? You don't want to be compared to your neighbor. You want to be covered for what it is you do day in and day out. And with a private policy, that's what happens. Also, I've yet to see actually a group policy that doesn't do this. The definition for total disability is you can't do your job as they've defined it, and you can't be gainfully employed. And I will tell you that for most of us who are type A and want to serve, even guys with TBIs and strokes have figured out how to be productive, if for no other reason to get the hell out of your house. Most of
Right.
us are not hardwired to stay at home. And you don't want to have to worry about losing any or all of your benefit. They've also gotten really creative. Most of them now will limit mental health and substance abuse to 2 years. They have this new category called subjective illnesses that is including but not limited to pain, headaches, fatigue, um, ringing in the ears. There's a giant list that they're
And
only going to pay for 2 years.
and this is specifically on the group side, right? The group
We're
disability insurance.
still talking about
Gotcha.
the inferiorities of group.
So they
Um,
suck.
yeah, since COVID, um, yeah, yeah. No, you know what? It's better than nothing. And
Right.
there are definitely people out there with complicated medical histories where I will say, look, the group policy, it's better than nothing, right? Um, but in a lot of places, it really does hurt us. And since COVID, we're seeing more policies that are not covering work-related injuries or illnesses. I don't know how we're supposed to prove where we get sick. Like it's a slippery slope. We've also started seeing group policies that limit musculoskeletal injuries. And I already said that's the number one reason we go out. Shoulders, necks, backs are huge. Um, and a lot of people don't realize that there's a limit. And so a lot of times people will come to me saying, oh, 60% of my income is covered. I'm fine. And then I get to be in this like unenviable position where I say, hey, check page 4. Did you see where it said 60% of your base up to 10,000 a month?
Oh,
And
damn.
then they're like mouths gaping,
Hmm.
right? A lot of docs in academic settings have a very small base salary,
Yeah,
and
a
then they
lot of it
get
is based
different
off
buckets,
incentives. Yeah,
right? You get
yeah.
your RVU, you get your teaching stipend, you get your quality assurance
Folks,
stipend,
listen
right?
up, academics,
None
listen
of
up.
that, none of that is covered. None. It's your base. That's how they get you, right? And again, there are times just like everything in medicine, there are exceptions to the rule. And there are times where I will actually say to somebody, a group benefit needs to be part of your negotiation because we're not going to be able to get you covered and you need to have something. And again, something's better than nothing. But when we're talking about private policies, we get to make them as strong as we want. The one thing I'll say about association policies is if it looks too good to be true, it usually is. Oftentimes, they also have some very interesting things snuck in. Um, as far as I can take the ACS, for instance, I just reviewed theirs not too long ago. You have to be full time for it to be active. Well, how many docs do we know that are going part time or,
Right.
cutting back for work life balance?
Or
They
just do
consider,
locums. How do you keep track of those numbers, right?
right. And so, you have to be a paying member of the society. You have to be full time. There are limits on when and how you can keep pace with your income. Um, it may be that, um, oh my gosh, I just lost my train of thought. Hold on. I
It's
have
all
a
good.
sticky.
I'm telling you guys, she's surgical with this. She's surgical with this.
Sticky. Again, I told you I'm old. Um, right? So their definition of total disability is you can't do your job and you can't be gainfully employed. So that's a modified total disability definition. Their residual benefit, so a residual or partial benefit is a benefit that kicks in if you can do your job, but not sustainably. So think things that cause fatigue, right? MS, autoimmune diseases, early degenerative diseases, things where your treating physician is going to say, look, you can do your job, but maybe you can only work 4 days instead of 5 or 6 hours instead of 12 hours, right? You can actually still do what you're supposed to do, right? You're going to take a pay cut. There are actually more residual and partial claims filed and paid every year rather than total. And, I can again anecdotally tell you that every single one of my breast cancer survivors went back to work part time
Mm.
during their treatment for their own, well being. With the ACS policy, you can only get a residual benefit if you're totally disabled first. And we see that in a lot of association policies.
Hmm.
So that's a little bit wonky to me. I think it's misleading to say that they have a residual benefit if you have to be totally disabled first.
Now,
Um,
what about the locums realm? Let's
so
let's jump into
locums,
that.
yeah,
Now, with
so locums is
the
really
locums,
interesting.
when you're a locums doc, you are doing all of your benefits by yourself,
Right,
basically. You're paying
right,
for your health insurance by yourself. You're probably have your own life insurance. You have all these different things, and
right. So they have no coverage.
they have no coverage.
Right.
So what happens in that situation? How are you paying for this? Everybody talks about tax benefit this, tax benefit that. Should you pay for your disability insurance with your business money or with your salary money? Can you clarify all that for us?
So first things first, who pays for it is an accountant question, but 99.9% of the times you want to pay yourself. Remember, if your business pays for it, it's probably going to be taxable because you're
So
going to end
similar
up
to that
writing
first
it
example.
off
Yeah.
from your business, right? So, very, very rarely do I ever recommend that somebody pay for a private policy with their business money. You want to get your benefit tax free. As far as locums go, it's really been interesting. When I started doing this about 7 years ago, no one covered locums. They basically looked at them as nomadic and, how are they going to prove what they're doing? And it was something I really fought hard for when I started doing this because I said, look, these guys are the guys who really need help. They don't have any group benefits. They're everything. They have no insurance. They're making decent money. And a lot of them are practicing between 20, 30, 40 hours a week on average, right? And so over the last couple of years, each of the carriers has come out with how they're willing to cover, and it is carrier dependent. Some of them, it's based on, are you going straight from training to being a locums? Are you going from being a W-2'd attending to locums? Or have you already been doing locums a while?
Hmm.
And then they kind of come up with what that math looks like. And again, sometimes there's creative accounting. If you've created an LLC for yourself or something like that, we can only cover what Uncle Sam sees that you're making. And so sometimes, private docs, locums, they have good accountants, so they don't pay a ton of taxes. There's a lot of write-offs, but then unfortunately, I can't cover it all, right?
Got you.
Um,
So
but
if you normally are, if your normal salary, so basically what you're saying is if your normal salary is like $200,000, but your company pays you the equivalent of $75,000, you can only insure
the
that 75,000.
75.
Yeah, people listen up,
However,
listen up.
I think it's a huge win for physicians that most of the companies will now cover locums. It's just that we have to prove contracts upfront, right? And prove that somebody really is going to be working at least 20 to 30 hours a week. And I say 20 to 30 because in the insurance space, full time is 30 hours a week, part time is 20 to 30 hours a week. And also, when I started doing this, there was only one company that would cover part time physicians. And now most of them will. It's just,
Mm.
there's a couple little nuances, but even docs, when people start their own practices, right? And they're not up and running, they still need to be covered, but they may not be doing as much.
So you're saying if so in that situation where you're a locums doc or you're transitioning to locums or you're starting your own practice, you still recommend getting private disability insurance. It's just that it's going to look
Every
a little different.
everyone who needs their income should have disability insurance,
Mhm.
and I tell people, and it may be the salesiest thing that I say, but if you imagine that your last paycheck was really your last paycheck, would you be okay? And for most of us, the answer is no, right? Maybe you have 3 to 12 months of emergency savings, right? Maybe. It makes a huge difference in how you kind of can move forward, reinvent yourself, make sure that you don't have to sell your house, you don't have to take your kids out of school. It's huge, and everybody talks to us about needing life insurance when you have dependents. You need to have homeowners or house insurance. What are the real odds that your house is going to catch on fire? It's really friggin' low, right? We all have car insurance, we all have health insurance. A lot of people get their engagement rings insured, right? I would have
All right.
much rather lost my engagement ring than my ability to practice.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Now, who should they be buying from, right? Because, obviously, you know, folks like you, Pearson and Ravitz, you guys are brokers.
Correct.
Explain to us, why
What
folks
that means.
listening, say again?
What that means.
Yeah, explain to us what that means and how that works and stuff. Because I think that's another confusing thing for people also is, you know, the person who's trying to sell me insurance, should I be buying from them? I don't know. Explain that to us, please.
So there's a little bit of semantics involved. So if we're going true to term, there are agents and there are brokers. Agents work for a single company and are incentivized to sell that company. Brokers are independent. They make arrangements and agreements with all of the carriers and are not incentivized to sell one over another. And, one of the things I always tell people is if you're speaking to somebody and they're only showing you one option, that's bad. You
That happened
want
to me.
some,
Yeah.
happened to me too, you
Yeah.
know, you want somebody who's going to go over at least a few options and go through what the nuances are. What's good for you may not be good for me. And each carrier has something that's just a little bit different that makes it attractive, right? I say that like certain things are real sexy in one household and not sexy at all in another household, right? And so, you want somebody who's going to be impartial and go through a few options that's really going to explain stuff and not just talk at you. I remember, 20 years ago, the guy came over, he showed me one thing. I had no idea what the hell he was talking about. He didn't really define things for me. I was brought up to trust, right, people. And I'm like, okay. And I signed and I ended up with two policies because I got what long story short, neither of them were exactly what I needed.
Oh
And it was
man.
just that I wasn't educated, right? And I didn't know the right questions to ask. And ultimately wasn't advocated for either. When I had my problem and I called, he was like golfing in Florida and really couldn't be bothered because a
Making
lot
money off of
of
the premiums, possibly, off of the commissions and stuff. For
and
me,
that
go ahead, please.
I
Go
was gonna
ahead.
say that's another thing that personally was really important. Um, in our company, everybody is salaried. So our producers have no idea what our commission rates are at all. I don't even know what our commission rates are. Our CFO does. He happens to be my husband, so I'm hoping that he's not screwing me over. I don't ever want one of our clients to question our ethics or to question our recommendations because it's not based on money. We give good people good jobs and they have benefits and, all the things, which is a little bit different than historical, traditional life insurance and disability insurance salespeople.
Well, if I must throw in, so probably for me, a little bit over 10 years ago, like 12, 13 years ago, I met my insurance guy at a party, which was a red flag right there. But the way in which I got sold, it was here's this one company, and I'm going to sell you this one company, but I have the ability to sell all these other companies, but this one company is so badass that I don't feel like selling all those other companies. And I fell for that, right?
Yeah.
They remain to be named. I will not name that company.
Yeah.
I will not name that person. But it's the same thing. It's like rather than present me three other or two other or
Hmm.
whatever, it was just no. This company is the best. I can sell all the other ones, but I feel so strongly about this one. You should go for that. And everybody was sold the same thing. And I just found out that I was overpaying. There was one point where we were paying more for our disability insurance than we were paying towards our student loans. I mean, it was a disaster. So now, like I have my insurance through Principal, and my wife has it through Emeritus.
And it's funny you bring them up. In May of 2023, they both changed their products as well.
Really,
And so I tell people that when I'm showing stuff now, because if somebody's comparing notes with a friend, if a policy was purchased before May of 2023, they're not looking at the same policy.
mm.
And
Yeah.
it's
But
been
did it get worse or did it get better? It always gets
some
worse.
of some of each, admittedly, some of each. Again, it ends up being somewhat obvious to me who they don't want to cover for a while and they price out. So they all kind of ebb and flow over time.
Got you. Got you. Well, but that's the reason why you're on this show. That's the reason why you're showing your expertise. And that's the reason why,
Thanks.
you're a sponsor, openly show guys. She's a sponsor of this show is because we rock with her. And we think that if you're going to buy disability insurance or life insurance, we can talk about that on a different episode, that you're getting it from someone who has the heart of a teacher and or someone who kind of went through some bullshit, which is what you did also. And so
Yeah.
you really know what you're talking about. So that's super, super important. Is there any like final parting thoughts that you want to leave us with, Dr. Pearson, before we get on out of here?
Listen, I do not want people eating cat food to have insurance, right? So you need to think about what you have that you can put towards this and work with somebody who's willing to reverse engineer stuff as residents. Because I get it. I lived paycheck to paycheck and wish that I had gotten it when I was a resident.
Mm. Boom. There it is. That's Dr. Stephanie Pearson with Pearson Ravitz, y'all. Once again, we're going to put her first episode with an extremely compelling story. We always talk about equating your self-worth with what you do on the job. But that's a really compelling story. We're going to put that episode in the show notes so you can take a look and take a listen, as to that episode. But once again, Dr. Stephanie, if people want to get in touch with you, people want to work with you, people want to purchase some disability insurance or life insurance, how we do that? How do they make that happen?
Our website is pearsonravitz.com. I am Stephanie Pearson on all social media platforms. There's also
I bet you 20 years ago, you thought you'd never say something like that, right?
no. I also would have never been happy with 4 computer screens. It's crazy. If you would have told me
Well, your
10 years
life is
ago,
used to looking at multiple strips, though, on different screens, but
yes,
not in this
yes,
manner, though.
yeah, yeah. But I am incredibly easy to find now. You can call the office 610-658-3251. You can email,
Truly
you
a Philly
can,
number.
yep, carrier pigeon, whatever. But
Okay.
yeah, I am very easily accessible.
Boom. There it is, guys. Dr. Stephanie Pearson talking to us about disability insurance. What I learned from this is definitely the locums situation. So I'm going to be contacting my broker right now and be like, yo, what's the deal? I've been in locums for like the past 5 years. What's the scoop?
Well, you
But
should
I
be
appreciate
fine
you.
though. You have
Okay.
a policy, so it
Right.
should be automatically renewable and non-cancelable. You just want to make sure that you're not under insured.
Look at that. We need to do another episode where you like deep dive me. That's what we should do. Like I have all my financials. I'm not going to
I'm
hide anything
happy
from
to
you
do
guys,
it.
guys. I'm not going to hide anything from you guys. I may redact like my social security number because I don't want you guys
Yeah,
trying to,
that
create another account for me or get a HELOC,
yeah.
under my name and stuff. But that's what we're going to do next time is seriously have you on and kind of do a deep dive on on my disability insurance and tell me if I'm getting screwed or not. So,
I'm happy to do it, babe.
all right. All right, Dr. Stephanie, we'll talk to you later.
Thank you for having me. Love what you guys are doing.
Thank you.